Coming to you from an undisclosed location, somewhere deep in the heart of the Santa Monica Mountains, I'm your intrepid host, L.A. Marzulli. We got Micah here from Noble Gold. Folks, we invested in Noble Gold years ago. And, the gold markets go up and down, up and down, up and down. They're still way up from when we bought in about 3 or 4 years ago. So we'll get into that. First, a word from our trusted sponsor.
A new survey found that 1 in 3 Americans feel most self-conscious about their body, you guessed it, folks, at the beach, more than anywhere else that they go. Summer's here, folks. The trips, the pool days, the photos are already happening. And if you've been eating better, cutting back, generally trying, but cravings keep taking over no matter what, that's not you being weak. Your hunger hormones are working against you. Folks, this is why Peggy and I take GLP-1 Elevate every single day. I've been doing it now for several months. I've noticed a huge difference. Instead of pharmaceutical override, it uses clinically studied plant-based ingredients like metabolate to naturally restore my body's own hunger control signals. In clinical studies, it raised GLP-1 levels by 56% and cut calorie intake by 20%. No prescription, no dreadful needles, just quieter cravings, real fullness, and a body. I'm starting to grin, folks, but I'm getting pretty proud of it because I've lost weight and I'm working out at the gym 3 days a week, okay? To kick off summer, get 51% off only at trimwithla.com. That's trimwithla.com. Every order comes with free VIP coaching for life, a 60-day satisfaction guarantee, and free express shipping with subscriptions. Once again, folks, go to trimwithla.com, trimwithla.com. Again, Peggy and I have been taking this at least 3 months. I've noticed a difference. It's amazing. It works. You got to be cautious. You got to give it at least 30 days to see a difference. But what it does is it controls the hunger levels. It really does. So you're not eating as much. And I'm not craving sweets and sugar. In fact, I've eliminated sugar completely from my diet. That's it. Trimwithla.com, trimwithla.com.
Before I bring Micah on, here's today's short. Thank you, Rachel Tolson, our media director, social media director. And they're only a minute long. I just love them because she gives me all these different topics and I weigh in on. Here's today's short. This video is for entertainment purposes only. Are we alone in the universe? What about these so-called ETs? Fermi's paradox states this: if the universe is teeming with life, where is everybody? So how do we sit down with our children and break this to them? I would start with Fermi's paradox. If the universe is teeming with life, where is everybody? So then we've got Star Wars and Star Trek and, Raiders of the Lost Ark and all this stuff, which is always pointing to this extraterrestrial intervention. What if they're not ETs? What if they're nefarious entities, i.e. fallen angels, which is part of a Luciferian umbrella? Demons are under that umbrella. Watcher angels are under that umbrella. But it's very nefarious, in my opinion. Do you think it's okay to abduct a 5-year-old boy or a 5-year-old girl? Essentially, that's what Steven Spielberg is promulgating in his film Disclosure Day. But I digress as usual. Sit them down, talk to them, and tell them we've not been given a spirit of fear. Why? Because all this is in the biblical prophetic narrative. Sit down and read them one of our books or show them one of our films. Thanks. I am L.A. Marzulli. Micah from Noble Gold, thanks for joining us. Really appreciate it. So, we invested in gold. Peggy and I invested in gold years ago. One of the best financial moves we ever did. And I know this sounds a little woo-woo, but I woke up one morning and I felt the Holy Spirit tell me to invest this chunk of money that we had in gold. And we did. I told my wife, she kind of gave me yeah, sure, but we did. And it's turned out really well. And, thank the Lord for that. But, the gold market crested, around 55, 56, way earlier this year. And my first question to you is, there's talk that gold could go over 6,000. Your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I absolutely think that's a possibility. We are at what I believe is a tail end of a consolidative phase that was necessary after rising so steeply and so much at the end of last year and into the end of January.
Mm.
And these types of 2 steps forward, 1 step back, 2 steps forward, 1 step back. That is the cadence and expected pace of a structural bull market. Nothing goes up in a straight line. But we had huge rises in gold last year from 26, 7, $800 all the way to 5,600 in January. So nearly 100% move there in gold. And silver went from $30 this time last year to a peak of 120. Now, silver does have that tendency to put in these big floors to move sideways within a range for an extended period of time, and then it can shoot up multiples in a very short period of time. We actually saw this in 2020 after the COVID crash in March. Silver that summer went from $11 to $30 just in July and August. We had, again, a similar move from 30 to 120 this past fall and early into the new year. And so after congesting and kind of moving again within a range these last 5, 6 months, we've had kind of a consolidation zone between $60 on the low end. We're just a little under that right now going into the end of June, and $90 on the high end. And it's really been kind of head faking people. We thought it was going to break out above 90 in February. It did so again in March. And so we've had 3 attempts to break out of this consolidative box, and then we've also had 3 attempts to kind of break down below that $60 floor. Now, we did very briefly do that. We got to a low of 56 just last week. But again, today for a monthly and quarterly close, the end of this month is very important for bigger, longer-term charts. Lots of institutional money and hedge funds, they use these bigger monthly and quarterly charts to indicate, that the uptrend is still intact for the long term, and it is. So silver's, again, just brushing up on 60. And, you know, seasonality, let's talk about that just quickly, LA. If you look at decades worth of data of price action overlaid on top of each other, June often marks a significant price low for the rest of the year for both
Wow.
gold and
Okay.
silver.
Wow.
And that, some of my clients' best purchases are kind of during the summer lulls or the doldrums, where the metals aren't too exciting. But as you know, as a longtime investor yourself, we always get a pretty exciting fall rally. And I do expect that with midterms and other big political events and geopolitical events that we will see continued rally. And I think 6,000 is a healthy target for the end of the year for gold. And then I do see a nominal all-time high being reached for silver now, 120 being the previous high. We could get into something like $150. I know some are calling for much higher than that. I tend to be pretty conservative in my forecast because we're not trying to clickbait or be sensationalistic with where we think the metals are going. We think that primarily they are the best place to be as far as safety is concerned. You're outside of the bank, you're outside of the dollar, you're outside of any counterparty risk. You hold these physical gold and silver bullion items physically yourself at home. We, of course, do fully shipped and fully insured, securely shipped and fully insured home deliveries. And we roll over retirement accounts so that you can actually diversify your IRA or your 401k that you've been working so hard at preserving and growing and adding to over the years. We can help you own physical gold and silver within an IRA structure as well. And of course, when we look at the landscape investment wise, stocks and AI are in an obvious bubble. It's not obvious when that bubble will pop. That's the $1 trillion question that nobody has an answer for. But we see a lot of warning signs or flashing red lights and all the kind of telltale signs that we are in a big bubble. It's reminiscent in my mind to something like the dot-com crash.
I knew you were going to say .com, right? Sure.
Now, it doesn't mean that it crashes tomorrow or next month, but I have a sense that it'll be sometime after midterms. Of course, there's a big political impetus for this administration to keep the markets at least where they're at, if not push them higher, because unfortunately, the stock market has become a big barometer for how well the economy is doing. Unfortunately, the big gap between haves and have-nots continues to grow because of asset inflation, which is due to money printing and things like that we've seen. So I think they'll intervene to keep the stock market going. But at some point, I can't tell you when, maybe it's next year, we expect that we could see an absolutely massive correction in AI and in tech and the things that have been doing so well the last couple of years. And you would see a big flood into safe haven assets like gold and silver after that, like at 2008, you don't normally get that rotation of capital from stocks into assets like gold and silver until that correction is underway. We believe that it's always prudent to, you know, rather be 6 months early than a day late, type of thing, and it's always better to take these steps proactively, and of course, we see that at the sovereign level and the central bank level and at the institutional level, countries have been buying gold and silver hand over fist for the better part of the last 2 years. That's actually what's been driving price so much. Retail investors are still relatively, unaware of the benefits of gold and silver. I'll just share this quick stat with you, LA, that half of 1% is what represents all things precious metals related in American portfolios. So that's physical gold, paper gold, ETFs, mining shares, everything all together is less than half of 1%, whereas 70% is still allocated to stocks. And that's the most concentrated positioning that we've ever seen in the stock market across American portfolios. And that's actually probably the worst time to have such a high concentration given the bubble that's forming. And so once the stock market crashes, we should see a rotation of capital that gets gold ownership to something like 3 to 5% of total allocation across portfolios. And that means 6 to 10 times higher gold ownership than right now. So it's still an under owned asset. Um, Again, most people aren't proactive, but we try to encourage our clients to be making proactive moves to protect themselves and their wealth. And yeah, we think this is the right time. Again, seasonally, the metals are low. Price-wise, they're off their highs. They're recharging momentum, resetting sentiment, and testing technical levels that are holding so far, which mean that we're probably setting up for a pretty decent rally out of the end of the summer and through the fall, like I said, with everything else going on.
That's a really brilliant assessment, if I may say so. Let me ask you something. There's talk, and it's typical out of Washington. You hear one thing, and then you hear two things contrary to it. So, talk about Trump bringing us back into the gold standard. Have you heard anything about that? What would that do to the price of metals? What would that do to the metal market?
Yeah, and there's been a lot of chatter, I should say maybe speculation or theories that a gold revaluation is potentially underway. I'll just share that I think it's a fairly low probability outcome for the government, any government, not just Trump's administration, but any government to return us to a gold standard voluntarily. I think that we will end up back on a gold standard and with gold and silver being revalued as monetary metals at much higher levels. But I don't think that'll happen until the market's corrected. We have a big recession, kind of like in '08 or 1929. And on the other side of that, the money printing that the government will engage in to save the system and to bail out the economy is what will really cause high inflation, if not hyperinflation. And on the other side of that, people will have zero confidence in the dollar's ability to store value or be used as a unit of exchange. And that's why or when the government will be forced to return to a gold standard. But of course, there's a camp of people who believe that this big anniversary, just Saturday, the 250th anniversary of independence, will be used to bring us into a new golden era. Of course, we've heard a lot of thematic talk and insinuations from this administration about potentially returning to a gold standard. The U.S. Mint, whether it was intended or not, a couple weeks ago actually listed prices for commemorative coins, a 1 ounce gold Liberty Bell for the 250th anniversary, and they're selling it at $20,000 an ounce on the U.S. Mint website. That led some people to speculate that perhaps the U.S. Mint had accidentally front run a potential announcement from Trump this weekend that will be repricing gold to $20,000 an ounce. Now, they had that same 1 ounce Liberty Bell coin in silver being priced for about $1,500 an ounce. So, of course, these are huge numbers. I think that gold and silver will get there. But again, I think that's it, 5 or so years away. Um, Here's the deal. I think that there is actually mechanically a possibility for it to happen. We do know that at the Treasury, there's an account called the Gold Revaluation Account. It's existed for many years and was last used when they revalued gold from $34 to $42 an ounce back in the 70s. What the Gold Revaluation Account does is if we put a new price on gold, it generates cash for the government and the coffers at the Treasury without having to Exactly, without having to raise taxes or cut spending.
Right,
Yeah, we have $39 trillion of national debt.
so money go there, right?
Exactly, and with the amount of gold that we have in the treasury, which is purported to be 8,100 tons or 261 million ounces, at the price of $4,000 per ounce, which is the exact price that we have today for gold, that's the actual market price. For every $4,000 that they revalue gold by, that creates $1 trillion of net new cash for the gold revaluation account. Now, of course, if we intend to, clear the debt or cut it in half or wipe it out overnight, you'd need a much higher gold price than the current market price. But marking the gold price on the treasury book or treasury's balance sheet on the treasury's books from the current, they still hold those 8,100 tons at $42 an ounce, the 1974 price. So just marking it to market, which means allowing it to be held at the current price, would create $1 trillion. Now, this is where speculation about 20,000 or 50,000. If he wanted to wipe out the debt overnight, it'd be $150,000 an ounce gold, but he could actually do that. But here's the thing, we own a lot of gold, the most on paper, but I actually believe that China, that on paper only has 2,500 tons, has been strategically accumulating gold stores as a neutral reserve asset, and they probably wouldn't shock me if they had something to the tune of 10 or 20,000 tons rather than the 2,500 that they report. Obviously, they're not very transparent with their data.
Not at all.
And they don't allow any gold to be exported out of the country for the last 20, 30 years. So if we did do some kind of gold revaluation, we could help ourselves out of a terrible fiscal situation. However, we would also be benefiting all the Eastern powers that have been stacking gold very seriously for the last several years as well. So do I think it's likely that we proactively revalue gold and silver? No. If we do have a stock market crash coming and a recession coming, and if I'm aware of this, I'm sure that smarter people than me in the administration are aware of the potential of that over the next year or so. They will not handcuff themselves from the ability to print money freely in order to save again or bail out the economy like they did in 2008, like they did in 2020 with COVID lockdowns.
Right.
I think we could actually see more money printing than during either of those times combined.
And the money's not backed up by anything. It's just like it's
Correct.
I mean, that's what's so. I mean, Trump is a lot of people have different thoughts on what Trump is or what he isn't, and I've never met the man. I probably never will. I find some of what he does fantastic, and some other things it's like not so fantastic. We won't get into that, folks. But the bottom line is, um, let's say they reset it. Let's say they reset the gold standard, okay? And all of a sudden it goes up to what you said. Let's just say arbitrarily it goes up to 10,000 an ounce. So that's, you were talking 20 grand an ounce. Let's just cut it in half to 10. How does that affect the guy on the street like me, who let's just say has a mortgage? I'm just going to pick a number. Okay. We don't have a mortgage, but let's say most people in the country have a mortgage of, let's say 200,000. Let's just say, just use that number. So all of a sudden, you've got, I don't know, you've got a bunch of ounces. Let's say you got 20 ounces. All right. And you bought it for X amount of dollars, but you wake up the next morning or one morning and all of a sudden gold's up to 20,000 and you've got, this stash of gold. Can you pay off your mortgage? Can you cash it in and pay? How does all that work?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So we're a full service broker dealer, LA. So we get you into the metal. We advise you over the course of your ownership of the metal. Of course, I, provide lots of insights, market updates, portfolio reviews. But we buy your metal back, most importantly, and we'll always buy it back for whatever the market price is at the time of sale. Now, if we did wake up, let's say Saturday morning or Sunday morning, and this announcement's been made and gold is repriced, all of my clients over the years will be extremely happy. Again, I think that and using that money to eliminate debt and other things and just live your life, right? That's what retirement accounts are for, so that you can rely on that money for the things that you need, so that you can live comfortably without, fear of not having enough to get by. And of course, a lot of people do struggle with that. but I think it would be obviously a huge windfall. I think that those prices will be reached organically. I don't think it takes a repricing. I think it's just a matter of letting the structural bull market take its course. Those numbers actually, I think, again, are achievable probably somewhere near the end of the decade. Maybe it spills over a year or two on either side of 2030, but those are my personal targets. And yeah, I think that you'd set yourself up. Now, all roads lead to gold either way. And like I said, I think the return to a gold standard and the revaluation of gold is inevitable. But in my opinion, it won't occur until after a major financial crisis to which the government responds with major money printing, which will cause high inflation and hyperinflation and a lack of confidence in the currency. And then it's on the other side of that that they realize we have to go back to a gold standard. And so, one way or another, I tell my clients we won't know exactly how these things will unfold, but you need to have that insurance and that part of your wealth that you want protected forever in physical gold and silver. You need to have that done prior to. Now, I'm not suggesting that people need to buy this week prior to the 4th. I just think that it's something to think about now while prices are down from their previous highs. So they are congesting and consolidating in a very constructive way. If the national debt and the dollar printing and all these other issues that we have economically, unless all those things go away, I have absolutely every confidence that we'll see higher highs in the years to come in both gold and silver. And so, like I said, all roads lead to gold. You need insurance. You hope you never need it. But I think that it's an important part of everyone's portfolio. But still, like I said, half of 1%. Hardly anybody is in this trade yet. As well as it's done, it's still very very underowned and undervalued technically.
For those of you who are a little skeptical, remember Germany during World War One, and banana republic countries, everything went belly up, and you see pictures of wheelbarrows full of paper currency, which is essentially worthless. And so, let's say you have $100,000 in your savings. Let's just round it up, nice round number. What portion would you suggest people invest in gold or silver?
Yeah, it's a case by case, and we work with clients in a no pressure fashion to understand, where they're at, how old are they, what types of needs and expenses do they currently have. I'm all in. I'm 100% gold and silver. 80% of that is physical. 20% of that I'll trade in a little more technical short term stuff like miners and auctions and stuff like that. But for most people, it should be the part of your portfolio that brings you peace of mind. There are some rules of thumb, 10%, 20%, but generally I have a couple of guidelines. You need to leave yourself access to cash because you can always sell your gold and silver, but it would definitely not be fun to sell it before we get into these major peaks. So whatever you contribute to your gold and silver portfolio, you want to think about being able to hold on to that without making adjustments for a year or two. And alternatively, you want to leave yourself a year or two worth of cash or emergency funds in case something happens. You'd hate to sell your gold and silver too early. And so, again, it's a case by case thing. I'm very aggressive. Obviously, I have very high conviction, and I have for a very long time, and it's treated me very well. And like I said, we're still in, let's say, the fifth inning or something like that in this ball game. There's a lot of runway left. Um, but yeah, I would say, there are some people out there that are talking about 20% being a healthy allocation. Ray Dalio suggests that. What I do think is you want to probably reduce your concentration to stocks by a healthy amount so that you know that you're not leaving too much at risk. Again, we don't know when, but we do know that all the telltale signs of a major market crash are starting to align. And yeah, look at gold and silver as a place where you can make a lot of money. Of obviously, LA, you and I have both done very well over the years in this space, and there's a lot of money still to be made. But think of it as it's the ultimate form of protection. And there's a time and a place where you get paid to hold the safest assets. And I think that that's kind of a risk reward profile you can't find anywhere else. You need to sort of weigh the risks and weigh the um, sort of the asymmetry of a trade. So very limited downside in the metals and extreme upside, whereas stocks might actually have very limited upside, but quite extreme downside. And so you want to look at the various asymmetry of, risk reward in different asset classes. And I don't think you'll find one that looks more promising than gold and silver. So, you have to make a move that is within your means and that makes you comfortable and that makes you sleep well at night, knowing that at least if you're going to commit to physical gold and silver, you want to be in it for a year or two on the minimum.
And I agree. I think 20% is a good number, to invest in. And, I dabbled in the stock. Peggy and I put some money in the stock, and we basically, we put a very minimal amount in, and, they tanked. And that's when, so we had a little bit of money left over there. We pulled that out, and then we powwowed, and that's when we got the word, take this chunk of change and throw it in the gold, which is what we did. And it's one of the best things we ever did. And I'm not like the financial guy. I'm not, but I watch it every day. I go to APMEX or Noble Gold and and look at the index. How do folks who want to invest? And again, folks, I'll just give you the caveat: there's always a risk. So do your homework, check it out for yourself. It's been good to us. I think it's going to go a lot higher than what I think. We're in sort of a valley, like Mike is saying. I think we're in sort of a valley right now, and I think it's going to go up. So we'll see. But that's speculation. We don't know. How do people get a hold of you, Noble Gold? Please tell us.
Yeah, so you can call us by phone, and you're welcome, pardon me, to ask for me. I'd be happy to work with anybody. And I just want to emphasize it's just a conversation. We want to lay out the steps. We want to answer your questions, provide any information that we can. We have no guarantees either, but we're all investors. I'm personally, a father, a prepper, a hunter, a gold bug, of course, and you have to prepare yourself for potential outcomes and potential disasters. Gold and silver are a key part of that, but so are, guns and ammo, food and water, and these types of things, and being self-sufficient and sovereign. So make sure you're looking after your finances. We can help you with that, but look after everything else as well and protect your family for, potential disaster. Now, you can email me. Some people want to write and they don't want to talk, and I understand that they're a little gun shy to pick up the phone. So you can email me at Micah, MICAH, at nobleira.com, and our number is 877-646-5347. You can ask for me, Micah, but any of my fantastic colleagues will be happy to help you. Obviously, been working with your audience members for a very long time. They're some of the best and most knowledgeable. So I want to thank you for the work that you do, having me on, allowing me to introduce myself to your listeners, but also to just kind of lay out a little bit of what we're seeing in the market. And of course, I'll be happy to be back on and provide updates, maybe a month or so or something from now. But we'll not forget. We'll see what happens this weekend too. Maybe I'll be asked to get back on next week if we see some unexpected news out of the Trump administration. But thank you so much, LA. Is there anything else you want to finish with?
No, that's great, Micah. Thanks so much for coming on the record. Really appreciate it, folks. We've invested noblegold.com. They've been our sponsor for a number of years, and there's a reason for it, because I believe in their product. We've invested in it, and I'm really glad we did. That's it for today. Thanks for watching. I'll be back tomorrow with another show.
Death comes for us all. Today, it came for Bob.
This is your life, Mr. Frisbee. You can call me Mr. O. Time does not exist here. We will go through every person you have ever wronged and everyone who has wronged you.
I can't forgive him! Bob, come down here.
Aunt Mary?
You cannot enter heaven with hatred in your heart.
Take my hand, Bob. We'll go together. Are you escaping, Bob?
Stay back!
Bob Frisbee must face every sin of his past. Will he find forgiveness in his heart or surrender to the darkness? Find out in the brand new novel by L.A. Marzulli, The Waiting Room.